Good morning, afternoon, and evening to our valued audience and speakers on the line today. Welcome to the highly anticipated YALDA webinar under the theme, the International iBootcamp 2024, Meet Your Investors. Today, we aim to emphasize the practical benefits and actionable insights that delegates will gain from attending the iBootcamp, especially the pitch competition. My name is Grant Davis, the YALDA South Africa iBootcamp 2024 chairperson, and it's my pleasure to host today's session today on behalf of our organizing committee. But as always, just before we go straight into the substantive content of our session today, I just want us to go through a few ground rules before I introduce the topic for our discussion today. So I think for starters is just some etiquette rules in our virtual room. And I'll just read through some of these and just ask you to just be mindful for everybody else who is on the call so that we all collectively benefit from it. So I think the first one really is when you enter the webinar, please make sure that you are on mute and remain on mute throughout the roundtable. Please also ensure that your camera is off. We are mindful that some of our participants who are joining from their phones. And, you know, in some parts of the continent, data is expensive. So just to be mindful of everybody, keep your camera off. But also we want you to engage today. We've got some wonderful speakers as part of our panel today. And so please, we urge you to type your questions or comments in the chat box. And when you do so, put your name and country so we can just identify you. And when the time is appropriate, we will select or call upon those individuals to really reflect on the questions and pose them directly to our panel. And so if you are selected and asked to introduce yourself, please just give us your name, tell us a little bit about where you come from, and then just repeat the comment or question that you typed in the chat box. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us this evening, afternoon in some cases, and probably, I don't know if it's still morning, but late morning, I think, in some places, I think. But I think largely it's really, we're delighted to welcome you to our 8th International iBootcamp that will be hosted by the Youth Alliance for Leadership and Development in Africa in the vibrant city of Pretoria, South Africa. Our theme, which is breaking information barriers in intra-Africa trade, accelerating youth inclusiveness and implementing the AfCFTA, holds deep significance for our continent's growth and progress. And so the training programs that will take place at the Innovation Bootcamp from the 21st to the 25th of February 2024 are of particular importance in terms of how do we ensure youth inclusiveness. It is in these dynamic times that the arrival of our bootcamp could not be more pertinent. Our theme holds profound significance as it resonates with the current pulse of our continent and also resonates with the African Union's Agenda 2063. The AfCFTA has opened unprecedented opportunities for our continent, and it is imperative that our youth are at the forefront of this transformative revolution. As the African Union declared 2023 the year for the acceleration of AfCFTA implementation, we find ourselves on the cusp of an era filled with boundless opportunities. And I think what is really so exciting about today, particularly the 31st of January, is because today, the President of the Republic of South Africa and His Excellency Wamkele Mene, the Secretary General of the AfCFTA Secretariat, officially launched South Africa's participation at the as part of the AfCFTA, their first products that will be traded under the auspices of this agreement. So really today is such a historic day and the start of really some really exciting times. And so Our training program is designed or poised to equip individuals with the skills and knowledge required to thrive in the evolving trade landscape in the global market. Additionally, we have an exciting pitch competition for our valued delegates, where the winner will receive a $25,000 investment or more to further their growth plans. It's an opportunity to expand your business across borders, which is vital in order to thrive in today's dynamic business landscape. So this webinar really aims to introduce you to some of the iBootcamp investors, to our delegates, as well as set expectations for delegates, youth entrepreneurs, to ensure that they understand what is expected of them and the potential outcomes of the iBootcamp, especially the pitch competition. So really, I look forward to engaging all of you today, this evening, and to also hear from our investors who are on the line. And without any further ado, I would like to introduce the speakers that we have today. And the first speaker that we have today is Joshua Ayo Omomia, Senior Partner at THCO in the United Kingdom. So thank you very much, Joshua, for joining us. Our second speaker is Kendi Kamwambia, Partner and Investment and Compliance Lead at Heva Fund, and she's from Kenya. Welcome, Kendi. We look forward to hearing from you. And last, but certainly not least, is Brendan Mullen, co-founder and managing director of Secha Capital here in South Africa. Brendan, we look forward to hearing from you this evening. And so what I want to do is really go straight into the substantive part of this conversation. I think I've done enough talking this evening. And really just to reflect on the questions that we will pose our speakers today, and they will reflect on as they come on one by one. So really what we're asking our investors to do is to share briefly what their business does and what exactly they look for in the businesses that they invest in. And also to reflect on their experiences around how important is it for young entrepreneurs to have a long-term vision for their ventures when seeking investments. And finally is for them to share a lesson learned or insights from their own experiences as investors that may be particularly valuable for young entrepreneurs to know. And I'm sure, as you can agree with me, these are so useful as we go into and prepare for the conference that will be held in approximately 4 weeks' time. So I'm really excited because this gives us a few tips to make sure that our pitch decks are ready and waiting. So without any further ado, I will ask, please, Joshua, if you could just come online, switch on your videos, and share a little bit about some of those questions and reflections that we alluded to earlier. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Grant, for the introduction. It's a pleasure being here. All protocols being observed. So yes, how would we want this to go? Should I just jump right into answering the questions, or?
Absolutely, Joshua. I mean,
awesome.
The floor is yours.
Okay. Awesome. So I'll start off with what we do. So I'm the managing partner, the lead senior partner at THCO. And what we do at THCO is we help companies all over the world with their talent placement needs. And this supports them for growth. Most of the companies that we work with are in North America, mostly in the US, Canada, and then in Europe. Adjacent markets that come right after that are Asian markets and then the African markets. So that's just in a nutshell what we do. I think the second question, if I'm right, do you mind maybe just sharing that again? That's what do we look out for in businesses before we invest, correct?
Absolutely. And how important is it? What exactly you look for in the businesses you invest in? Apologies. Yes, there it is up on the screen.
Okay. To answer that question properly, I would say Um, I have I like to call it the 8 foundational metrics. It used to be 7, recently became 8 for me, that I use as my metrics to invest. I left this out in my introduction. I'm also an angel investor. I'm invested in more than 5 startups so far. And if I'm to group this 8 metrics, again, because these are key to me before I invest in any company. The first one, I love to always look at the business model. What does the business model of the business look like? That just puts in context about the business. The second one is the traction. How have you done so far? Where are you at the moment? And what have you done so far? Another, which is the third one for me, is your cash flow. So what's your liquidity at the moment? And how does cash come in and come out? What's your costs, the operations, and all of that? I also like to see your financial projections. So what does that look like in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years, based off your insight with the business? One thing that's also very important is the market size. All right. How big are you targeted? My preference is a lot for companies that can scale beyond one market. So you're not just doing a product or a service that's just limited by a boundary. My preference is like businesses that can scale into other markets and even probably scale outside Africa. That's a good one. Another one that is really important to me is your background. So how does your background relate with the business you're doing? Were you previously in a role like that? Have you spent some time in that industry, or it's just straight off the bat? Something that's also very important in that sense. Another one which is very important, which I'll say is the seventh, is customer acquisition. How do you want to get customers to patronize you? What's the strategy behind that? Now you might not have all of that figured out, but just to get a sense of what that looks like. Now, remember I said there used to be 7, and I've mentioned 7 so far. I would say something happened in one of the companies I invested in just last year, and it made me add this 8th foundational metrics, and that's the market condition. What's the market condition at that time, or the market condition in being receptive to your product or to your service? It's very important as an entrepreneur that when you're starting up at the initial point and when you think you need investors to come in, you have answers to all of this or can answer them in some way. And maybe I can jump in to another question. Yeah, I can see one that was on the screen is what from my experience, what lesson, yes, if you put that, yeah, what the last one, can you share a lesson learned from my experience as an investor? And I think I'll just quickly bring that up in because it ties into why that 8 cardinal foundational metric was added from my perspective. And I'll just share the story. So sometime in 2021, there was a particular digital bank that was more geared towards a particular type of market. And I was one of the very early investors into that digital bank. Now, what we didn't see coming, so they started operations fully in 2022, but what no one really saw coming was how the funding markets would be in 2023. Unfortunately, a lot of their target users were more around startups and businesses that needed to raise funds, typically. And so we realized that 2023 was a very tough market generally in the startup phase. And that macro and microeconomic problem or factor, if I put it in that sense, affected this company that I had invested in. And unfortunately, they couldn't even survive it. They had to pack up. And that was why, from that point, made it very important that as a business owner, as a startup founder, as an operator, it's important that you really follow very keenly what the market condition around your business is, and then you find ways to hedge against that. If it means you are reducing heavily your capex, your operational cost and all of that, do that way ahead of time. If it means that you are diversifying within the set of what you do as a business, think about that very critically, because it's very important as a business owner or as a startup owner, whatever you find yourself in, to really have a sense of that in that factor. All right, so I'll go to the next question. Could you just put this on the screen again, so I answer all of them? Yeah, so in your experience, how important is it for young entrepreneurs to have a long-term vision when seeking investment? It's extremely important. Every investor, when you come have a meeting with an investor and you pitch, your product or your service, the first thing on the investor's mind is, how do I exit from it? At least the majority. Exit could be, are you planning on listing in the long term? It could be, are you planning on being acquired? For longer institutional investors, are you part of what our portfolio is like in the long term? Whatever it is, but the main focus of an investor is looking at, one, how profitable that can be in the long run, and how, if you are the right person, right, to get it to that level. And that's why it's extremely important that you must have a very long-term vision, a long-term goal, a long-term trajectory of how your business is going to grow. Now, this isn't just you putting anything on paper or just writing it how it comes to your mind. You have to fully be analytical about it and realistic about it. It's not a gut feeling. Look at conditions at that moment, put it vis-a-vis what your cash flow is like, what your revenue is like, and then you can do proper, if you want to go quite deep, a proper financial model, or just a rough projection across many years. This gives a clear impression to an investor what your business, what the potential is like for your business, irrespective of the stage and the level that they meet you in. So it's extremely important, in fact, for those of us that are maybe quite early in our business, or those that have gone in within our business, I implore us to sit back and draw at least a 3-year projection for your business and how you see the business growing within just that time period. So yes, I would say it's extremely important. Is there any other question I've missed out on the screen? Do you mind putting that again? Also, I answer it.
I don't see any
Okay,
at
perfect.
first glance.
Perfect. Okay. So I think I've answered all of them. That's great.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joshua. And before you just depart, I think it's really interesting. I was jotting down some of those eight factors. And perhaps for me, just around perhaps expanding a little bit more around how you maybe just an experience that you've had with a prospective company, and maybe some of the pitfalls that you've seen when they've pitched or brought or tried to bring sort of an idea towards you. Yeah.
Okay. So the first pitfall coming to mind would be, if I, for lack of better word, over exaggerating, a huge exaggeration on your target market. And some entrepreneurs and business owners do this to make the market look so huge. Remember, you're always talking with human beings that probably have a good level of knowledge on what you're telling them about, and there's no need to try to be clever. It will make you look dishonest, and that's a major red flag for every investor. So be quite realistic, use the right data to share what you think your market would look like. Another one is not really having a clear proposition on what you do. We see some situations where, as a business owner, you're trying to do so much at the same time, because, I'm doing this, I do this, and yes, you may feel they are quite related, but that lack of focus in sometimes we've noticed can draw you back and not get you to that point. So investors would typically like a company that appears to be a bit more focused, and then we can see that across the line. It's always preferable if your background aligns with your business. It's not a complete elimination for you not to get investment, but it's always preferable when you have a very solid background that aligns with that business. It could even be that spend 1-2 years in that industry before you decided to start your own business in that sense. So that's usually another. Another coming to mind are who are you working on this with? Investors would typically like projects or products or services from companies that there are more than one main person driving it. So is there a co-founder there? Are there co-founders? It just helps because at the initial stage of a business, there are so many moving parts that sometimes you can't do it alone, especially if you want it to be as effective as possible. You need other people to support you with different skill sets, that sense. And so it's always very helpful to have those, who are you working with? That in itself too comes with, we've seen a lot of co-founder drift and all of that. So you must have a very good relationship with those that you're working on with it and have that shared vision on where the company is going to. I think the last one I would say is cash is king. Your cash flow is the most important, truly. How do you manage your cash flow? How do you get cash in and how do you retain it? All right. What takes your operations? Are you running a business that's, you know, taking off all your revenue, or you're not making revenue at the moment and you want to just stand on investments to get you to that point? It's very important to understand the place of money in your business and understand it really across what drives your business. Just off the top of my head, I'll say those are some pitfalls that we would say of accountant. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joshua, and I hope that everybody's jotting these down and taking them in. It's very rare that you get an opportunity like this to actually get the nuggets directly from an investor. So I'm looking forward to all of those questions and comments. So everybody who is on the line, please don't hesitate to put your comment on the chat. I am looking at the chat. Remember, just type your comment or your question with your name and your country, and I will call you out. But thank you very much, Joshua. So I'm going to ask you to just hold it just a little bit there, and we'll ask Kendi to come in and just give us her reflections on the questions that we posed. So Kendi, welcome. Yeah, please share us your reflections.
Thank you, Grant, and thank you, Joshua. You really summarized everything that I was going to talk about, but I'll just also reiterate just from my own experience. So just to introduce myself, I'm Kendi Kamwambia. I'm a partner at a fund called Hiva Fund. We are based in Nairobi. However, we do have a reach in 13 Eastern African countries. So we range from, or rather our reach is from Comoros, Mauritius, Madagascar, Djibouti, Ethiopia, the Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, 13 Eastern African countries. That's our reach. And our mandate is to be a catalytic fund for the creative sector, specifically in Africa. We have ambitions to go continent-wide, but at the moment we are operating in 13 countries. And so how we catalyze the creative economy is one, through financing. We issue both commercial facilities such as debt, revenue shares, mezzanine debt, convertible equity. We also take equity in companies, and also we invest through grants. Our other arm of intervention is through research. We undertake research within the creative sector. We map the creative sector within Eastern Africa. We study and write publications around what's happening in that particular sector for governments, for DFIs, and anyone who's interested in investing in that creative sector. Our third implementation arm is capacity building, where we undertake trainings for small enterprises, small and medium enterprises. We train entrepreneurs on bookkeeping, proper financial management, strategy, branding, communications, just the entire, all the entire components of what makes a successful business. So to go straight to the questions on what we look for when we're investing, the thing I find that influences us most is the entrepreneur. Joshua did mention all the business aspects, the traction, the market fit, the market size. But one other key thing, other than what Joshua mentioned, was the entrepreneur, because when you're going into an investment relationship, it's somewhat like a marriage, and the person that you're investing, the entrepreneur that you're investing in, you have to be aligned. They have to have values and qualities that you have seen work for entrepreneurs. We're discussing this recently, and we're trying to mechanize. I was in a conversation where people were trying to mechanize a way that you determine who is a good entrepreneur through tests, through psychometric tests. And we were trying to look at data that has been revealed, and something interesting that came out of that is that most of the entrepreneurs who were successful were found to have narcissistic tendencies. And it makes sense. Like, for you to be an entrepreneur, you have to believe in yourself. You have to know that there's no one better than you. There's one who can do this better than you. So that aside, or rather the psychometric tests and trying to mechanize and digitize what makes a good entrepreneur, one of the key things that we look for when we're investing is the characteristics that you want to see in an entrepreneur. So you want your entrepreneur to be resilient. You want your entrepreneur to demonstrate, challenges that they've encountered in their business and how they overcame that. So that's just on the entrepreneur side. But of course, on the business side, you're also looking at the traction that Joshua mentioned. You're looking at historical performance, how far have they come with the money that they had, and what kind of utility can they give the money? What kind of utility can they give once you give them money? What kind of growth are you looking at once you invest money in them? On the question, I'll just talk around all the questions, or rather answer all the questions at once. When you talk about the long-term vision, why it's important for an entrepreneur to have long-term vision, aside from knowing whether you're aligned with the investor, at what point the investor will exit. Do you want an equity investor who will stay locked in for 10 years? Do you want just a debt investor who comes in for 2 years and exits or self-liquidates through repayments of the loans? The other key thing that why it's important to know, why it's important to have the long-term vision and draw down the strategy for your business, is because it helps you sort of see the runway between now and year 5, between now and year 10. One, what does the political landscape look like? Are there going to be elections? What's that going to mean for your business? How are you going to mitigate against such risks, political risks, environmental risks? Someone is saying the volume is muted. I'm not sure whether that's.
No, we can hear you. We can hear you. I think, Prince, maybe my suggestion is try and I think pick it up on your side. There might be a network issue.
All right. So also the benefits of having a long-term vision is that you're able to see, or when you look at the runway, you're able to see, where the intersections with the digital and technology come in, where tech comes in your business. An example is, Nokia said, the CEO of Nokia said they did everything right. They just didn't see an instance where, smartphones will be this advanced. And so they didn't really take into account, technological budgeting and planning for how their product or their services are able to take advantage of the current technology and also be technologically relevant. So when you have an horizon that you're looking at, when you're looking at your business long-term, it helps you also to catalyze and take advantage of digital interventions. The other thing is that by having a long-term vision, you're able to plan and see, so I'm lacking this particular skill set. At some point, I will need a CFO. I'm lacking, market information or intelligence. At some point, I will need to employ this particular kind of software, or have a CMO, a chief marketing officer, who will allow me or allow my business, to grow in leaps and bounds. So by having a long-term vision, you're able to plan better. It also moves you from being subsistence, where you're just making enough to pay your bills, to pay the few employees that are in your company at the moment. Having a long-term vision helps you see the broader picture. You're able to, know whether, by what leaps and bounds do I want to grow? Do I want to branch into other countries? Do I want to go continental-wide? So it's very important for you to have a long-term vision, so that then even when an investor brings in their money, they know exactly how broad the scope or how broad the dream is. The other question was around the lessons learned, what we've learned so far, and where businesses sort of get some, or rather the pitfalls when businesses come to pitch. The thing that we've learned so far is for smaller businesses, I encourage everyone who is running a small business to get it right now. And by getting it right, I don't mean, like pour all the money in getting the systems and processes right, but like having a framework of what is needed. For instance, and I'll explain this further with an example. For instance, you're a small business, but you never keep your books. And so when an investor is looking at your books, they can't really trace, what's been happening in your business for the last 3 years. My advice here is you can have an accountant on a part-time basis. You don't have to have someone sit at your office every day if the capacity is still small, or if the need for them is still small. You can have someone come every quarter or half yearly, just put the books into context. You can also be able to see where you're lacking in skill set, whether it's marketing and how to bring someone part-time, or even your friends who have this particular skill sets, how they can help you at a reduced rate or at an affordable rate for your small business. So get the systems right, ensure that you're tax compliant. There's a time that we really liked our business. They had everything we were looking for. The traction was looking good. But when we came to the due diligence stage and you're looking at their taxes, they haven't kept up with their taxes. When we did the tax audit, there were a lot of tax issues that were creating risks that we couldn't undertake at that point. And so we lost that investment, and they lost they lost the opportunity to get money from us because of such small issues. So my advice is, or the lessons that I've learned with businesses, no matter how small you are, get it right. Get it right from the onset. Demarcate the departments that are needed. Demarcate the talent that is needed, and then figure out ways to acquire that talent in a cheap way. They don't have to be there full time. They could be employed somewhere else, and they just come on the weekends to do books for you, or on the weekends they do for you marketing. So just figure out a cheaper way to mitigate that. On the downfalls, or rather the downfalls where people go wrong when they are pitching, I'd say one, as an entrepreneur, you're selling a vision, you're selling a dream to the investor. You're saying, if you give me $10 million, I will make you $20 million. And so the investor needs to trust you. They need to know that you know exactly where you're taking them. And such small pitfalls where you don't know what the unit margin of your product is, you don't know how much you make per product, such things reduce the investor confidence, because they're like, you've been running this business for a while. You should be knowing the intricacies, the nuances per unit product, where your target market is, what's that size. So general knowledge about your product, your market, your costings, those are very key to an investor who is looking to entrust you with their money. Back to you, Grant.
Thank you so much, Kendi. There's just so much we're getting this evening. I'm just like, can't type fast enough. It's really awesome. And I must say, there's just one takeaway that I have to comment on. And that's just something I think I'll certainly, it's like a marriage that you enter into. So that should already tell you just the level of due diligence that goes through that process. Because I mean, we don't just marry anybody, right? Well, at least we're not supposed to. So really, really thank you so much, Kendi. Thank you also for sharing also those pitfalls as well that we must avoid. What I'm going to do now is, before we go to our last speaker, and before we circle back to all, is just kind of reflect on who's on the chat. and just kind of where everybody's from. So thank you. I think we've got Salif Bowen from Mali. He's a young agricultural contractor. Welcome. We have Felix, who's in the US. We have Angnur Keshav from Mauritius, into precision manufacturing of metal and plastic parts as a business. I mean, that's just some really awesome stuff, and I'm just skipping through some of them. We've got Amantle Simule from Botswana, a construction company. Janisha Gaya from Mauritius in the business of vegetable plantations. Miguel Wallace from Liberia, who runs an e-commerce company that allows buyers and sellers to trade easily. And just before I move on to our next speaker, we also have Diva Mobedi from South Africa, who runs a fashion company that turns textile clothing waste into sustainable fabric, which can be used to manufacture clothing. So these are just some of the exciting people who are on the call today. So I'm really looking forward to some comments. Even if you don't necessarily have a question, please do share what has been some of your challenges in approaching investors, and potentially how do we draw on the collective experience of our speakers today. But to go straight into kind of the next kind of section for our event today, I want to call on Brendan Mullen from South Africa. So Brendan, without any further ado, it's over to you. Please do share your reflections and experiences. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Grant. Nice to meet all of you, and really inspiring to see everything in the chat and to follow these important speakers. First, I thought I'd introduce myself and Secha Capital, our view, how we invest, and kind of our view in the ecosystem that might be a little bit differentiated, and then happy to take questions as we go forward. First, about myself, I'll explain the accent. I am American, apologies. Originally from Boston, but I've lived here in Johannesburg for almost 11 years now. Started Secha Capital about 8 years ago with Nambuso and Rashil. So I'll share a few slides, but I'll try not to speak to them, but just it's nice to have that as a backup. So Secha, we're on our second fund. It's a $35 million fund. We're growth stage capital. We invest in Southern Africa in kind of your classic industries, agriculture or agribusiness, FMCG, a little bit of healthcare, manufacturing, business enabling services. And what we look for are kind of like old boring markets that you can actually reinvigorate with tech enablement or green economy. And what makes this a little bit different is that when we invest, we second one of our team members from Secha into the portfolio company. We call them operator investors. And we usually steal them from a McKinsey or a Bain where we used to work, or a Coca-Cola, KPMG, or a Goldman. We hire them at Secha, then we second them where they can have the greatest impact, multiplier effect, impact in terms of job creation, and financial returns. Now, maybe some examples: Hair City, it's a wig company; iGen, battery storage; FarmTrace, it's agricultural software; Culture Fresh, it's a farm, but it's controlled environment, it's hydroponics. So, kind of large, boring, fragmented, non-winner take all industries that we've found a decent amount of opportunity to grow with a slightly differentiated idea. Making sure, am I sharing screen? Yes, I'm not. Yeah, so this is us even more succinctly. We're very thesis driven on that first one. We come up with an idea, and we look for specific companies. We second that operator investor, which is difficult to do at our fund size. Usually people that have a value add are much larger. And we found a way around that. And then we believe that this is a sustainable recurring competitive advantage. So rich pipeline, avoiding the pack, toolkit to transform the business. Our investment criteria I could share, but I think more importantly, this is something that I want to leave you all with, because I do think a lot when you talk about youth entrepreneurship, we use the term leapfrog and moonshots a lot, which are great. I am glad people are doing that. I am glad people are investing that way. But we're in a different space. We invest in the adjacent possible. So we invest in kind of those growth inflection points of often adolescent stage companies. So, I like that the adjacent possible is kind of the edge of the present state of things. It captures both the limits and the creative potential of change and innovation. And it's a little bit less risky. It's a little bit more sustainable. And I contend it's a little bit more replicable and modular. And sometimes I do fear, one of the reasons I was excited to speak tonight, that we are asking our young entrepreneurs to make huge bets and talk about taking VC money. And if you're not a unicorn or a kudu or whatever word we're using, it's a failure. And you have a burn rate. And those, I'm glad people are doing that. Absolutely do it. That's ambitious. But there's also a lot of opportunity. I'm looking at our portfolio company in agriculture, and beauty and Biltong, we have an investment that's done quite well. And, so that's kind of where I wanted to make sure I emphasize is that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in large, fragmented, non-winner-take-all businesses with a decent amount of profit pool, which still creates an incredible multiplier effect. Whether it's replacing its import substitution, it's reinvigorating and bringing more value and innovation to a market that is maybe stagnant. Or even just kind of stealing market share away from multinationals, getting to decent economies of scale locally, employing people locally. So that's kind of our story. Like I said, we invest in Southern Africa. We're not, pure VC. We don't take tech risk. But we kind of invest across the spectrum from after that. So happy to expand or happy to take questions as you guys see fit.
So maybe, Brendan, just before you go, and we just have a look at some of the comments or questions from the colleagues on the floor, is really just to get a sense from you is what have you find as some of the common pitfalls that people who have approached you for support at such a capital have done that obviously resulted in not getting support from such a capital, and just reflect on some of your experiences.
I think great question. And so first, that's a big reason why I mentioned the adjacent possible versus leapfrog. Those are very different things. And I guess following that, it's what type of financing you need. And I do think there's an obsession with venture capital, private equity, and I'm in that space, so I should push it, but it's not always the answer, and it creates a different business model, different mentality at times. So I guess really knowing where you need to get capital, and who would the partner be. And so equity is not always the answer, a VC, and they want growth. If you can get to a certain stage, there is working capital financing. You can do invoice discounting. Now there's new types, revenue-based financing, which is it's a good, it's the right financial instrument for some businesses. So really making sure that you are fit for the type of capital that you're looking for and your ambitions. There is nothing wrong with having a lifestyle company that pays you and 5, 6, 10, 20 other people a decent salary, and it doesn't become a unicorn. But that's a fantastic business. I guess outside of the financing, I think it is making sure that you understand your unit economics and what, these are very financy MBA terms or whatever you want to call them, but they're crucial. It is your GP, your gross profit, your contribution margin, right? Make sure those things make sense. And so that feeds into your pricing, and then your ability to scale and what costs could come in there. And then increase as a new business, if you're making a widget, or even if you're in software, like your working capital, that is crucial because you don't have, presumably, if you're not a multinational, you don't have a balance sheet with millions of dollars on it. So if you are growing and you have a long payment period, a cash conversion cycle, you have to buy inputs to make your widget, you sell your widget, and then you get paid. If that's 60 days and you're growing, you suddenly run out of cash because it's all stuck in working capital. I think that's one of the main things that people forget. And then, hiring can be tough, but it is crucial. So make sure you get the hire up front. So really invest in HR. And as you scale, if you're the CEO founder, learn how to delegate eventually. Those are the things I find. You hire when you need to, so you do it quickly. then it's a mistake. And then if you're lucky enough and you're good enough to get to a certain scale where you're busier than ever, you know, a CEO usually she's a jack of all trades at the beginning, doing everything. Well, eventually you need to delegate and hire people for that, because that's not where your time is best spent.
Thank you so much, Brendan, for that. You know, it's a really interesting thing. You know, you talk about learning how to delegate. And I'm sure that's quite difficult, particularly when you're quite passionate about your business and your idea. But it reminds me of a quote that I once saw around it was a view of the dance floor. So what that basically means is that you can be part of the dance for a while, but at some point, as the CEO of the organization, you have to go to the balcony and look at how everybody is dancing on the floor. Because without doing that, you actually can't ensure that you're all dancing the same moves at the same time correctly, which I thought is a really powerful statement. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I haven't heard that. I'll use that. I'm going to steal it and I'll quote you. I'll attribute to you.
Fantastic. You're welcome. So thank you very much, Brendan. And I just want to go through some of the colleagues who are on the call today, and just run through some of the names as I did. It's always exciting to see who's joined us. Please, guys, we still do have some time for some questions. What I will do is probably just point out to colleagues in the audience if I don't get any questions. So I guess it's just Christ Lau from Namibia, providing comprehensive sewing training and promoting sustainable practices. Welcome. We have Christelle Monte from Cameroon. She's a co-founder of food processing and solar energy project management company. That's very interesting. Mulugeta from Ethiopia on Better Life home-based healthcare. Welcome. We also have from Cape Town, Tela Masakale, who runs an e-mobility and transit media company, which deals with innovative fleet management solutions, including sustainable zero carbon emission e-hailing, logistics services, and digital transit media. Wow, I think that's quite a mouthful. Thank you so much for joining us. Mampo Letabo from Lesotho. She's into crafts. Welcome. I have a comment. Keshav from Mauritius, right? Keshav, do you want to just maybe share your comment to the rest of the forum before I ask our speakers to just give us our last round in terms of their comments? Keshav, please, over to you. Please just start with your name, put your video on, share with us your business, and go ahead with your comment. You are on mute, so you must unmute yourself.
Hello, good evening. So I'm so sorry I wasn't prepared to go on video. I'm not wearing any shirt or anything. Regarding my comment, it's we already have our business set up, but we are currently in the expansion project and trying to find land to expand here is one of the challenges we are facing. Especially for our business, which is in metal plastic precision manufacturing, and in that aspect, we need land that is industrial type of land, and which is specific to get the specific permit for. So that's the challenge that we are facing, because we have to find that specific type of land, and we have to find it where, like, we are already based somewhere with our customers around, and if we move further, we'll have to find additional customers. So it's better we find somewhere in the vicinity, like something in the vicinity here. And that's the challenge that we've been facing.
Thank you so much, Keshav. And I'm hoping that between now and our innovation bootcamp as we get all our colleagues to share, that you can start to think about some innovative ways around how you'll be able to tackle those things.
Definitely,
So
I'm pretty sure. Yes,
100%.
pretty
So
sure.
thank you
Thank you
very
so
much for that contribution. 100%. And then to Samuel Mushapa. Samuel, please, you have a question. Please introduce your name, where you come from, and please go ahead with the question. And if it's directed at a particular individual, please do also let us know who specifically you'd like to respond to that. So Samuel, over to you.
All right. Good evening. Am I audible?
You are.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. So my question is being posed to the previous speaker. And the question is, do you also advise that perhaps as an investor, when you're investing into a form of business, do you demand that someone who is starting up a business, they have to have some kind of startup capital, or is it that there is that policy that you can share to say, okay, they need to even start from level 0, or what is your view over startup? Thank you.
Yeah, fair question. Thanks, Sam. Short answer is no. We don't need to see other investors in there, other capital. I think the capital we do need to have seen is human capital, sweat equity. So no, we would not invest in an idea, something written on a page. No matter how good the idea is, we need to see execution. But you know, people say skin in the game, meaning money. Skin in the game can mean many things. So it is not a prerequisite to have somebody go into credit card debt or massive debt to start their company, or to have found other investors already. A great idea and then great execution is all we need to see.
Awesome. Thank you, Brendan. We do have a question from Molateli from Lesotho. And our question goes to all the speakers. So Molateli, please come onto the camera, ask your questions. And what I'll do is, Joshua, just get ready. I'll ask you to start, to start with you to answer that particular question. So please, Molateli, please go ahead.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, my question here goes to all our speakers, and how does a convincing pitch look like? Like in your experience, can you share one of the businesses you invested in, how that really catched your eye, and you were really convinced that it's gonna do well, and how is it doing now? Thank you.
Okay, that's an interesting question. Joshua, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, definitely. Thank you for that question. It's a really good question. I would say the first thing for every pitch or for every deck that we receive that captivates the investor is the level of storytelling. Even just from seeing the pitch deck before we have conversations with you. So craft it in such a way that one is visually appealing, and then I would follow the transition across the pitch deck. However, beyond that, there are other things that we look out for with every pitch that you should have typically in those things. So what's your mission, all right? What's your mission? What's your vision for it? What's the problem you're actually solving? We like to see that. We like to understand what's the problem you're solving as a business and how that comes in. Also, what's your product? If it's a product, or what's your service? If it's a service that you're doing, your traction, your revenue, and then most importantly, which also ties into the point that one of our speakers said, is the team, the people doing it. Like, who's doing it? What's your level of execution? And how good are you able to do that? And an example of one that I think really struck me, a particular business that I invested in, and it's quite recent. It's an AI company, and what they do is kind of disrupting AI in the call center, customer center space. And the potential and impact of their solution was well spelled out right on the pitch deck. And it was just so captivating that we had no choice but to speak with them, to jump in. And it's going so far now. They've gotten clients in Germany, got clients in the US, all while having customer care centers here, and they're optimizing it with AI. So yes, that's just what I can say from a pitch deck perspective. So great storytelling, let it be visually appealing, and then just those standard things that we look out for should be clearly spelled out right there in your pitch deck.
Wow, thanks, Josh. That's great feedback. Kendi, do you want to give your thoughts?
Sure. Joshua took out the words right out of my mouth, but to reiterate what he said, the best pitch we've ever received was from a lady who documented her story through video storytelling again. So she had a video showing the roadmap, where the business started, where they are right now, and where they're going. So that seamless transition of here is where we started, here is where we are right now, and if you give us this money, this is where we are going to take you and us, both our teams are going to reap the benefits of this particular investment. So I'd say over and above the normal communication skills, have graphs showing your performance, where the investor is able to digest financial performance much quicker, show how pictorially how the profit has been growing, how the revenues has been growing. That way they capture the information very quickly, and instantly they know whether this is a business that is showing good traction, because they don't have to be like relying on the numbers, 1 million Kenya shillings, 2 million Kenya shillings the next year in terms of revenue. They can see it pictorially and graphically how that data is being presented. So present the data in a very appealing format. Do the storytelling. Visual storytelling is better, because then you're not speaking to them for 30 minutes. There's a video summarizing where you've been and exactly where you're going. I'd say the other thing to ensure that the information that you're giving them, whether it's in the video or you're communicating it, ensure it covers the business model canvas information very clearly. What is your value proposition? Who is your customer segment? If you can even drill down to the name of this customer and say, my customer is called Kendi, she's 30 years old, she shops here and there, and that's why I target her. When she's going to the mall, that's when I target her to buy my thing. So that business canvas, the business canvas model, ensure that information is being relayed to your investors, so then they can see a 360, they can see your business in a 360 format, and they're able to get more information and get a better picture of what the business does, who the customer segment is, the value proposition, the cost structures, the customer acquisition, how you're going about it. So just Google the business canvas model. It pictorially, it allows you to put your business model in a picture format, which is much easier to explain in a pitch session.
Great. Brendan, do you want to just add in there?
Yeah, not a whole lot to add. Those are great responses. I will add two things. One, when you have that pitch deck, and I think the content was well described, remember logic and structure. So I really like the book, The Pyramid Principle, where headline first, think of a newspaper article. Headline, first paragraph kind of tells what you're going to see, and the rest makes it very, taking complexity and making it simple. That classic stuff, whether it's deductive reasoning, inductive reasoning, make sure that there's a logic, a flow to it. I think disparagingly, sometimes it's called like the mom test. Can you show this pitch deck to your mom and she knows what's going on? I don't mean to disparage my mother, but she doesn't work in this industry. But if she can get it, that's good. And kind of on the flip of that, also expect more from these prospective investors. Like, they should be prepared. They should be able to do homework. They shouldn't have to just read the pitch deck and figure things out. We call it having a prepared mind or being thesis driven. And You asked an anecdote. We had a thesis around battery storage in South Africa, in Southern Africa, a few years ago, and we reached out to a bunch of battery storage companies. And one, iGen, we had a few meetings with, and then we said, no, we're not going to invest. And they said, no, you don't get it. Like, this is what you missed. And they were right. We were wrong. We invested, and now it is, I mean, it's grown 100x. It's we haven't marked it like the most recent valuation. It's 150 times what we entered in at. It's a Black female founded business. It's created 90 jobs. It's saved a ton of carbon. It's creating electricity in South Africa. So I'm glad they came back to us and we're like, no, you're wrong. You should invest, and here's why. And to be fair, and to the points earlier, that was their best pitch. They took the time to explain it in a way that we could understand. So despite, I feel like we put in the homework and the research, we were wrong. But then they improved their ability to kind of story tell to us. And luckily we invested, and yeah, it's worked out well, I think, for all parties involved.
That's such a fantastic story. And I hope that everybody who is on the call recognizes the symbolicism in that, because ultimately what that means is that it is your responsibility as the entrepreneur also, if you're really passionate, you've done your homework, to be able to communicate it in a way that ensures that you get the buy-in from our investors on the call. We have one more question. It is from Feira Gemeda Dima. So if you could come onto the video, introduce yourself, where you're from, and yeah, please go ahead with your question.
Okay, thank you, Grant. I'm Feira from Ethiopia. And my question is, how many pitches will be awarded on the event?
Sorry, just say that again.
How many pitches or how many candidates can be awarded on the event?
Well, okay, so just to recap then, there is one winner who gets 25,000 US dollars. However, Feira, there are investors on this very same phone call. If you can dazzle those investors, then you can potentially win yourself access to financing. So I hope you've been taking notes so that when you prepare your pitch decks, you've prepared them in light of some of the tips that they've given you, so you don't fall into those pitfalls and you are ready to give your best. And remember, as part of the iBootcamp as well, is we will also help you think through some of those things during that process.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your question. Colleagues, I really, really do appreciate all of you for being on the call. So what I'm going to ask right now is, as we're about to wrap up our webinar today, is just for our speakers to give their final comment or nugget or anything that you believe that you'd like to leave the young budding entrepreneurs with, in anticipation, of course, for the Innovation Bootcamp that will be held in 4 weeks' time. So I'll start with you, Joshua, and then Kendi, and then Brendan.
All right, awesome. I think what I would just drop here for the bootcamp is, to entrepreneur out there, just understand that your role is very pivotal. Africa needs you. Africa needs more of entrepreneurs really to transform the landscape of the continent and our individual countries. And I think it's just a level of encouragement. Do not think not getting an initial investment means it's a stop on your business. No, it's just time for you to listen to the reasons why, to gain as much feedback as possible if you need to iterate or you need to improve on some things, and then come back again, come stronger, and keep doing what you're doing. As much as, yes, you have investors on the call, the main factor that will make your business successful is you. And so the energy, the time, the strategy, the commitment, the dedication, it's really going to lie on you Investors are just there to propel it, really, but we need something definitely to propel. So keep being encouraged, come prepared for the bootcamp, and yeah, just cheers to all of us on the call that are investors and to many more that would go that path. Yeah.
I love that. Investors need someone to propel. Kendi, please go ahead.
My takeaway or what I'll leave you with from this session is ensure that you're aligned with the investors. There are many investors who focus on different things. So sometimes the lack of them investing in you is not that your business is wrong or you didn't pitch well. It's just that their focus is something different. Probably they're in health and you're in agriculture. So do your homework also on the investors available and the investors who are interested in your sector, and make sure that you align to them. Do your homework both forward, so going forward where the investors are, and also going back to your business. Know the nuances and the intricacies of your business, your market, who are the other players in that market, and ensure you have all the answers, or you anticipate all the answers, or rather anticipate all the questions that the investors might have. The other thing is that when it comes to the valuation, ensure that the investors are not also undervaluing you, and also when it comes to, they're not undervaluing you, and also you're not being unrealistic with your valuation. So get someone who has that particular skill set on valuation to ensure that whenever you're going into an equity conversation, you're not being hurt by the investor, and also you're not, making the deal not sweet for the investor. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kendi. Highly appreciate that. Brendan, your departing comment.
Yeah, when you do speak, try not to go third after very intelligent and articulate presenters. I have nothing to add. Josh and Kendi nailed it. That's really impressive. I'm taking notes.
No, awesome. Thank you so much, Brendan. I did see one more hand. I thought I was going to take that one, but it seemingly has gone down again. Great. So colleagues and friends, participants, young entrepreneurs, we've come to the end of our iBootcamp that will be taking place, iBootcamp webinar this evening. And so I'm really grateful to our speakers and investors who joined us this evening to talk to us about some of the things that they consider when they evaluate potential businesses that they may invest in, to give us as young entrepreneurs the heads up, because we generally don't get these opportunities, right? So it's really just to say thank you very much for making the time this evening. And if I'm not mistaken, apart from Joshua, we're kind of all on the eastern side of Africa, so it's evening. So for most of us who are on this call. So thank you very much. I know it's been, it's the end of the day and everybody's been quite excited to join. So maybe just to talk a little bit about just the YALDA iBootcamp that will take place in South Africa. So just to kind of recap, so YALDA is obviously hosting its Innovation Bootcamp, which is an intensive training program from young African entrepreneurs in trade or wishing to be involved in trade. It's our 8th biannual bootcamp, slated to take place at the Future Africa Center at the University of Pretoria from the 21st to the 25th of February, under the theme Breaking Information Barriers on Intra-Africa Trade, Accelerating Youth Inclusiveness in Implementing the AfCFTA. So the Innovation Bootcamp is expected to bring together over 350 youth and prominent professionals in person, and over 5,000 virtually from Africa and abroad in some form or the other. The iBootcamp provides a platform to connect with dedicated investors and overcome the challenges of securing capital. The program offers comprehensive training for business expansion and prepares participants for financing. The iBootcamp is unique in that it connects participants with actual angel investors, seed investors, funds, and debt providers who support who can support exceptional youth businesses. And really, it's my pleasure to announce that, we've already confirmed the support of the Africa Export and Import Bank, which is based in Cairo, United Nations Development Program, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, the International Trade Center, the AfCFTA Secretariat themselves, and many other partners who are coming together to ensure that this is a successful event. So don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to grow your business as a young entrepreneur in Africa. And we invite all young entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs to register using the link provided on the slide and also provided in the chat box as well. We also urge all participants to follow YALDA on our social media and register for our mailing list for the latest news on African development, employment, and scholarship opportunities, and inspiring African stories. And so, without any further ado, I'd like to thank all of you for making the time today. My sincere thanks to our investors who joined us, and to all of you who are on the call. For me, it's about, and Joshua mentioned it in his takeaway moment, it's about investing in you as the entrepreneur. We need you, and Africa needs more young entrepreneurs to drive the change that we seek on this continent. So thank you very much. And from all of us here at the Youth Alliance for Leadership and Development in Africa, and from me in Johannesburg, thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you in the next 3 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you and have a good night.